20 years ago, I got exposed to the idea that it's all one. And uh, it was a lightning bolt moment for me, not because I was certain it was true, but I realized I had never considered that deeply. I had always looked at the world as being made of different people and different things and interacting. And the idea that perhaps it's all one underlying unity was for me a startling question. And it began me on a whole new level of exploration of looking, can this be so? And along the way, it came to me to be that, yes, this is so. But I also saw there's a challenge with that, which is that even as I began to see how that makes sense and it began to shift my experience of life in different ways, I struggled with that we still live very much in a world of apparent separateness and being separate people. And as I listened to different wisdom teachers talk about it, I found that some of the things they said in a way could make perfect sense, and in other ways they didn't hold up to common sense. And in struggling to reconcile that, I developed a way of thinking about it in conversation with others that proved to be really helpful to me. And I've shared it with many people, and many people have found it helpful. So I want to share about that today. And I call it two frames, frame one and frame two. And they are frames in which we consider life. So let me start with the simpler one, frame two, which is the frame of everyday common sense duality. It's the general sense that we are separate individuals living in a world of lots of other individuals with all kinds of separate stuff. And think frame two duality, that's hence the name. Frame one is the one that opened for me as I discovered non-dual traditions. And frame one, like the number there, is about oneness. It's about unity. It's the perspective that there is only oneness unfolding here, and everything else is a kind of illusion. So frame one is the place in which suddenly these cool insights happen. And the notion like, I'm not the doer. I mean, that's an interesting notion. In frame two, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but when you open to frame one, you can see it, I can see it. That what's happening here moment to moment is an unfolding, that this system responds to it the only way that it could, and the same for everybody else. So nobody is doing anything here. It's all happening. And that's liberating, that's freeing. Yet, I still go out and people are going to ask me questions to decide something. And it looks like I better do it. If I suddenly stop and say, well, I'm not the doer, I can't decide, I'm just causing disruption and difficulty for everybody else. And people ask me to make promises. Could you give me a ride to the airport? And I say, yes. And they're counting on me to come through, not for me to say, I don't know, I'm not the doer. So it began to make sense to hold both frames as valid, that we coordinate in frame two. And in frame two, we do have identities, and we are expected to make decisions and even to judge or discern things and to make promises and keep them. And yet in frame one, we're not the doers. Nobody's the doer. And I don't think in my account that wisdom is sitting only in frame one. No, I think we have to operate in frame two. And so wisdom, in my thinking, is we engage fully in life, that's frame two, with awareness of frame one. That we make the decision, and we also know that ultimately we're not the decider, both together. Now, how do I live that? Well, it comes and goes in different ways. But what it's given overall is a great lightening up of my experience of life. Because without frame one, the stuff in frame two is completely real, solid, and being my thinking, my positions, all of that is really important. From frame one, none of it's so important. So what does that look like? Well, in our family, one of our big decisions right now is where our daughter's going to go to school next. And so we have lots of conversations about that. And as a responsible father, I need to engage in those conversations, and I need to weigh things and offer views and listen to other views and consider information, all of that. From frame one, I know it's going to play out however it plays out. And then I'm actually not in charge. It will all happen. And that gives a certain lightness to it, a certain peace. Like, yeah, in the end, this is going to play out as it does. And then in frame two, I say, okay, that's a really good point. Let's think about this, because that's the role I need to play in that frame. So that's how they come together. And I find that whatever wisdom pointer that points you to frame one, it's great to embrace it and use it to help you see frame one, and then to realize that applied to frame two, it may not make a lot of sense. One of my other favorite pointers is we don't exist. I don't exist. You don't exist. And again, in frame one, you can see that. In the sense of being a separate individual, no. No, we're all part of the unfolding. And isn't that great? And we have different experiences, play different roles, but it's all just us, part of that unfolding. And yet in frame two, we have identities, we have roles. People are going to relate to us through those, and they need to. It doesn't work. You can't coordinate in frame two without that. So we have all that, and we play it, but we don't have to get overly identified with any of it. None of it is that meaningful or that real. Doesn't mean, and here's an important point, that we take it in a trivial sense. No, I think to live frame two is you engage fully, while also knowing it's ultimately not who we really are. So that's the pointer, frame one and frame two. As I said, it was very helpful to me, and I continue to work with it and share it with others. And if it's helpful to you, great. Thank you for listening.